Are you ready to speak your truth and live in alignment with your highest potential? Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership, a podcast for leaders, thinkers, and future makers dedicated to creating the conscious workplace of tomorrow. I'm your host, Jenny Clark. Join me and my guests as we move beyond action and doing to the essential truths, knowing and being. Whether you're an accomplished executive like me or a leader in training, we invite you to listen, learn, and grow with us. Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership. And today, yet again, a fabulous guest, brilliant. This particular gentleman, I have to tell you, had a 7-page bio, not a resume, but a bio. And so it was my job to try to synthesize it into a few words so that I didn't spend a lot of time hearing about stuff that you didn't necessarily want to hear from me, but from him. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Howard Tullman is the founding executive director of the Kaplan Institute for Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship at IIT, which is the Illinois Institute of Technology. And he's the current general managing partner of the Chicago High-Tech Investment Partners, LLC, and for G2T3V, LLC, two early-stage venture funds. He was the longtime CEO of 1871 in Chicago, an entrepreneurial hub for digital startups, which was ranked #1 in the world. That's how I came to know Howard back in the 90s. Previously, he was the chairman CEO of Tribeca Flashpoint College. I don't know if I told you my son took a course there. And he co-founded that in 2007. And prior to that, he served as the president of Kendall College. There's more. Howard Tullman has successfully founded more than a dozen high-tech businesses in his 50-year career and created more than $1 billion in investor value, as well as thousands of new jobs. He's a futurist, a visionary, and an author of numerous books. I believe the most recent is called You Can't Win a Race with Your Mouth. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. Howard Tullman, welcome to Fifth Dimensional Leadership.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you for not reading through my bio because no one is more bored with it than me. So,
but there's so much to know.
Well, that's true. That's true. So I'm glad to be here. What can I tell you?
Well, why don't we start with this? Because you are so incredibly multifaceted. You studied law, you went into tech, and you practiced law.
Right.
You've been in academia, you're an art collector, and so accomplished across so many different domains. I'd love to know how your mind works and how have you been able to bring so many visions to reality? Before we get into the details of it, how did you grow up and how did you conceive that everything could be possible?
Well, I mean, look, timing has a lot to do with everything. And, when I was a lawyer, was the advent really of using the computer as a powerful business tool. So that led to me using it in the law, but then seeing the possibilities were far beyond that. And so my first business, which we started in 1980, so it's like 42 years old now, and it's still around, which is unbelievable, was managing information. And I think, frankly, that if there is a through thought, it's that taking information and turning it into knowledge and into useful, valuable insights has been a part of everything that I've done, except maybe in terms of computer gaming and music. Those were more just sort of sheer pleasures. But in terms of all the pure businesses, they've been about the idea that if you can take historical information or information that previously was sort of static and turn it into real-time actionable information, you can create enormous value.
Wow.
So that's been sort of the central theme of 4 or 5 businesses.
You kind of make it sound easy. Like, I came up with this thing. I was observing the world and noticed that there was a bit of a void, and you did it.
Well, look, we've all lived through this. I mean, we've all lived through the idea of stale information. So this was not, it wasn't novel. It was just a question of finding one opportunity after another. One was, what are things worth in the real world? And, they used to be captured historically. So that was only of limited value. What were people's reactions to exchanges that they had? That used to be recorded, and a month later you'd get a letter of apology or some complimentary thing. But trying to change how people interacted with other people, trying to change how they worked in medicine. Clearly, everything we're doing these days has to do with measuring what's going on with your body in real time and actually giving you instruction and information about that. And frankly, right as of today, pre sort of COVID, pre telemedicine's explosion, which has happened, your car mechanic knew more about your car than your doctor knew about your body. And that's not where we want to be. And so we're changing a lot of those things.
Yeah, changing a lot of them. Take us back in time, if you don't mind. Tell us kind of how you grew up and where and how that environment cultivated the.
I will. I grew up one of 6 kids. I was the oldest, which I highly recommend if you're going to be in a big family. I highly recommend being the oldest. The parents don't know any better, and and you can take it out on your siblings. So I grew up. My folks were. My dad was a competitive athlete. My mom was like a beauty queen. They met in college, a very traditional kind of thing. And they were ridiculously supportive of me in just about anything that I undertook or wanted to do. But they also were really grounded and solid and hardworking. And, I was just thinking about, we talk about code and coding all the time and, teaching kids coding. What we really need to do is go back to like 20 years ago and teach them a code. And the code might be work really hard, be honest, treat people as you would expect to be treated. Because I don't think the last 10 or 15 years, the messaging for the kids growing up has been anything like it was when we were younger. And it sucks. And it's about shortcuts, and it's about buying your way or tricking your way or faking it until you make it. I mean, it's just a horrible set of messages. And I go back, and my parents were the original mastery people. If you work 10,000 hours, you're probably going to learn how to do something,
Right.
And I don't know where we even look these days to have kids, to point kids to those values. We can't look at the politicians. We can't look at the celebrities. We can't look at the tech, even the tech leaders. You look at what's going on with Facebook. So I fear for that. And and of course, if you look at where religion has gone, it's all secular now. Religion is another tool that used to provide some kind of references. So that's not happy news. I don't know how it's going to get better. I hope that we, can continue as individuals to provide examples and to provide some leadership. But boy, it's going to be very challenging.
I wholeheartedly agree. You might know that one of the 5 dimensions that I point to is to activate mastery. Because I do believe that we all should seek to master first ourselves and our awareness, and then skills going to help the world.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. So Malcolm Gladwell is a friend, and the people have sort of locked into this mastery thing and the 10,000 hours and stuff. There's a great podcast that I just listened to by a guy, and he said, we don't understand that mastery doesn't mean that you have to be in the top 10 in the world. Like he said, there are like a trillion, chess players in the world, and the top 1% is like 7 million people. So that's a lot of room to be excellent without feeling like you have to be, absolutely the top of the top. And so there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room to be just really conscientious, really good, apply yourselves, do a few things really well, and focus on that. And so this is another thing where, I watch parents and, all of the sports, the helicopter moms and the athletic dads driving their kids crazy. Now, I understand that, sports and scholarships and things were a path for a lot of people that otherwise might not have gone to college and this, that, and the other, and continue to be also, vicarious fulfillment for parents who didn't make it, on their own. But boy, we're putting inordinate pressure on these kids who just ought to enjoy the game. I mean, they ought to enjoy it, and they ought to enjoy the concept of iteration. Because if there's a life skill that I would teach every kid, it's that if you keep trying, you'll get a little bit better every day. And honestly, that's the best you can do. That's
your best.
Yeah. Your best. Yeah.
And it's not the survival of the fittest mindset that I fear has taken over so many areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and I think that, giving everybody a trophy got a bad name. And frankly, it was not a good message either, because there is that's a great way to demotivate your prime performers, is to reward everybody.
That's right.
So you can't do that, but I think you can be honest. I wrote a piece a long time ago about a kid who we had to write him a letter and tell him he wasn't going to work out in the culture of that particular company because he didn't sweat enough. And what that really meant was that was the nature of the culture, and he was too well adjusted. He wasn't anal enough. He wasn't aggressive enough. And, in retrospect, that was exactly right at the time. It was a fair description, but it wasn't the kind of company that you probably would want to build going forward, because what you need to do is make room for everybody. They have different skills. You have a pizza guy, you have a guy who wants to work only at night. And if you don't make room for their oddities, you don't get their creativity. And it's a package deal. And that's what people don't really understand, that it takes all kinds, and you need to have people that just want it to be a job. It doesn't have to be a sacred crusade. It doesn't have to be their life's work, as long as they perform and try to do their best. And we're not very forgiving in that sense. In fact, Google and some of these other companies that did stack ranking, I mean, it sort of forced you to make choices that were really not particularly appropriate choices. They were great if there was only room for 3 people on a team, but they managed to exclude or to remove a lot of people that were quite qualified in the process. So,
well, I saw that, and I think to generalize on that point, it was a lot of valuing domain expertise over everything else, and not valuing some of the other competency areas, particularly leadership competencies, influencing and inspiring people, right?
Look, and you mentioned the Kaplan Institute. I mean, one of the goals there was exactly what you just said, and that was to teach the soft skills, to teach the entrepreneurial skills that are really life skills, telling your story, bringing people with you into the vision, all of those things. They have nothing to do with how great a coder you are or how great an engineer you are. But if you don't have them, it's going to turn out that they're a natural ceiling on your ability, because people don't get into management. They do great in the cubicles, but they don't get into management if they don't have the people skills to go with the technical skills.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to talk leadership. And I want to ask, when did you consider yourself a leader?
The person who is always willing to sort of step to the front of the line is going to be eventually the leader, regardless. And so this, my parents, we used to call this the rule of the best seat in the house, and that is somebody is going to sit in it. It may not always be you, but shame on you if you don't ask for it, because then for sure it won't be you. And that's sort of an attitude. I mean, I was. I always worked for myself, really always. And I had partners when I was at the law firm and things like that. But even from my earliest days, when I was a magician and as a kid, I just had an attitude that helped me to take on responsibility and to sort of put myself out there. And, that's a skill. You have to have disproportionate self-confidence and a lot of good luck. But also, I always knew that I may not outsmart everybody in the room, but I was going to outwork them if it came down to that. And so that gives you a level of comfort. This whole imposter syndrome and all these other things that, we talk about, that wasn't really an issue for me. I mean, I thought I was doing something valuable. Now, this is sort of another thing, which is, I always say that it's important for people to, to love what they're doing, to love how they're doing it, because, if you don't have the tools and everything else, you're not going to feel that you're able to do what you want to do. And then they sort of have to love themselves. I mean, they have to feel good about themselves, because any of those three things leaks, and you lose energy and you lose the ability to really deliver. So,
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I fear that that dynamic is operative among a lot of leaders in our organizations, right?
Well,
They're not
listen, I mean, the celebrity culture of today, is the biggest lie maybe of all, which is, I don't think that if you were to talk to 1 million entrepreneurs, I think everyone would say it's not about big cars and luxury and homes and boats. It's about having this unbelievable luxury of being able to go to work every day and do something that you're enthusiastic about. It doesn't even mean love it. It just means, because nobody comes in and loves every single day of everything you're doing. But if you can be enthusiastic about it, if you can work with people that you respect and who are talented, and if you can make a difference, then I think that's where you want to be. And it's really funny, because I was talking to Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, and another of the tricks is this idea of parents letting kids, probably to avoid arguing with their kids, letting the kids follow their passion. And the truth is, long before you go with passion, I think you have to go with skill and talent. You have to say, it's great that they're passionate, but if they don't have the skills or the talent, then you're doing them a disservice by saying, well, he wants to be a musician, but if he sucks and if he's not applying himself, he's not going to be successful, and so, So, I mean, when we did Flashpoint, which was one of our schools, it was all about that. It was taking a group of kids that were outcasts and not suited for traditional college or high school or whatever, and giving them digital skills and surrounding them with others, with peers. And lo and behold, they discovered they had tremendous value and huge energy. And they went from being, dullards and sluggards to being, people that took responsibility. And their parents would come to us all the time and say, I don't understand what you're putting in the water or what you've done to where did my kid go? I was afraid he was going to spend his life in the basement playing video games, and now he's making movies, or he's doing various things. And it was just a question of finding a path that could combine their abilities and their talents and their passion, and then getting out of their way. I mean, which I think is also important.
It's so true, but that's activating that. And there's a sense of worthiness that goes along with that was activated in those.
For sure.
Yeah. For sure. I love that. How did you discover some of yours? Speaking of skills, how did you discover some of yours? I mean, you had the enthusiasm, you had a lot of confidence, you had parents who were supportive and probably exposed you to a number of things.
I think that one of the things that you do, like when I was a lawyer, I discovered that I wasn't good at sitting on my rear end for 7 hours a day in the law library, and I wasn't patient, and a lot of other things. And so you do learn to a certain extent from seeing in others what isn't working and what you aren't going to be good at and things like that. But look, I go back to the same thing. I mean, my parents worked every day of their lives, and that message was the singly most important thing. Some of these other things, writing and speaking and stuff like that, you can develop those things. But I mean, fundamentally, they all grow out of, this idea that if you apply yourself, you can learn to do pretty much anything. I mean, in the degree of which you do it. Now, the second part of that, and again, this is a message for today's kids, it's not enough to even have the skill. You have to have a strategy to monetize it. And sometimes that means going to work for other people for a period of time. to learn more, but also just to feed your face until you make that jump, and this is a very precarious time. I mean, a couple of the articles I wrote in the last month or two about post-pandemic, I'm scared to death that millions of executives who no longer have their former jobs are going to think that they're suited to be on their own, to be entrepreneurs. And I don't think they understand what the job entails. And particularly, I don't think people understand that the job entails a whole lot of stuff that you hate doing, and not really just the pure enjoyment of what you thought you were going to be doing. And I always, W-2s always come to mind, and tax returns and stuff like, if you're the boss, you have to do all the crappy stuff, and you get to do less of what you thought was the joy of what you were trying to set out to do anyway. So, but I think the other thing is they're just poorly equipped to understand how much you have to roll up your sleeves and do things which are, if you want that's a curse. A curse is, anyone who tells you that this is not the highest and best use of their skills. I mean, and by the way, we're taught that.
Oh, we are.
We grow up, and optimize it. Don't waste your time doing things.
Right. Have somebody else delegate.
Have somebody else. And you know what? When you're building a business, you do a little of everything. And if you don't understand it and do it well and do it sort of with a vengeance, you're not going to be successful. So, but I mean, so in listing the things to look out for, one was just that you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and do a little of everything. Two was going to be, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to learn to accommodate a lot of people who do it their way, but you know what? They're your boss. And so you do it their way until you get a chance to earn the right to do it your way. And that may take a while, and it may never happen in the context that you're in. So there's, it's scary. I mean, I think that we're going to see a lot of franchises, a lot of trainers who aren't at the gym anymore. Now they're opening, they're renting a storefront, and that's going to be their training facility. And I just think they have no clue as to what's going on. But I really fear for corporate mid-management, which is not going to be rehired. And I think they're going to be rehired because a lot of these companies got a once in a lifetime opportunity, insurance companies in particular, to make a shift in the business model from fixed cost, locked in infrastructure. My God, I got 42 adjusters to variable cost. 4 times a year, there's going to be a hurricane. I'll outsource to 20 adjusters whatever I need them to do. And in the meantime, I won't be paying these people, 365 days a year full time. So that's a tremendous shift. And those jobs aren't coming back.
Yeah. But there's a different equilibrium, it seems to me, that can be found that actually does take advantage of a lot of folks who have been left behind heretofore, and that a lot of people have predicted are going to be left behind because of technology.
Well, look, if we stop stigmatizing vocational education, that's the clearest path. That's number one. Number one, today, a car mechanic is more likely to use a keyboard than a wrench. Okay. Simple. And Chicago just announced a program with Microsoft, 300,000 people being trained in digital skills. And what are the industries? Construction, service, and office. Yeah. So think about that for a minute. And those are paths that are not exportable. They are to a middle-class income, and they're right here, right now. And we just have to get over our stigma, but also the stigma of their neighborhoods. In other words, your kids come home and say, "Dad, why aren't you a musician?" And it's like, well, because I'm supporting you and making a living, and I work at a car dealership. And the kids get, this is all part of the same messaging. The kids are getting the wrong message about what's most important. And what's most important is providing for your family and doing what it takes to do that in the first instance. So I think vocational education is going to be a path. The other thing is, and this is a sort of complicated thing, and I don't know how, and I have some friends who live in Bronzeville and all these other places, and a lot of them are clergy. And I'm trying to explain to them that they need to tell their congregations to think,
largely African American for people who don't live in Chicago. Yeah.
To think about job creation and business creation in the neighborhoods, and forget this technology thing of a social network. Try and create a maid service or a child care facility or something like that. And because the difference is, if you build a real business in the neighborhood that stays in the neighborhood, that employs neighborhood folks, and you stay there, then the money stays there. If you create, selling, something on Amazon, the money stays there for 30 seconds. This is what happened with Whole Foods in Englewood. I don't think it benefited Englewood at all. I mean, it was you put a place in there that's corporately owned elsewhere, and all the ultimate benefit goes elsewhere. Sure, they hire a few clerks, but I think we have to figure out a set of services and businesses that can be successful in these communities, and that's how the communities are going to be regenerated successfully. I don't think it's going to be because their technology is all of a sudden going to enable. Because technology businesses are not people businesses. They're not people-intensive businesses.
That's right.
And so the leverage isn't there. The leverage just isn't there.
Yeah. Tell us about 1871, because it was ranked number one in the world. And tell us about your vision for it, how you made it happen, and the legacy that you left.
So 1871 was the year of the Chicago fire. And in fact, today or tomorrow is the 150th anniversary of the Chicago fire. The first day, I think it was like October 6th. And 1871, the name came from the idea that technology was, so following the fire, the city was immediately rebuilt, amazingly, with huge inventions, the skyscraper, the Ferris wheel, the Twinkie, very important food group. And so when we named 1871, the idea was that technology represents the going forward opportunity to re-envision and rebuild the city in new ways. And it was a hub. It was an incubation hub. The idea was to put together hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs in an environment where they would bounce ideas off each other, where they had common resources, where there were educational components and financial components and everything, you would need to support and build new businesses. And, at the time we had, when I started, it was, maybe 15 or 20 companies. And when I left, it was maybe 500 or 1,000 companies. And it was literally, billions of dollars of exits since that time. But the biggest thing was it really put Chicago on the global innovation map in a way that was very important. And we had delegations from all over the world, and they still come, to see what the magic was. Now, by the way, I think that putting COVID aside, I think innovation hubs alone have kind of come and gone. They've had their day, and a lot of companies have tried to create many in-house incubation and innovation labs and things like that. So we'll see what the next generation is. We have in Chicago post 1871, we started M-Hub, which was mechanical and manufacturing, Matter, which was medical. So water, Current is another of the incubators, which is about all the water issues. So it spawned, all kinds of more vertically specific incubators and innovation efforts as well. But, the goal was to create a place where you weren't alone. You weren't alone. You understood that there were other crazy people, going through the same dreams. And you need that support. And, it's not a support you can get only from your family or only from your spouses or, people like that. So that was 1871. And then, what I heard over and over again at 1871 was, what are you doing about diversity and the minority population? So we started within 1871, Wisdom, which was for women, the Hispanic incubator, African-American incubators. But there still came a time when I said, if I went down to IIT, where 70 or so percent of the engineers are also diverse, and I could teach them to be entrepreneurial, that would really improve and broaden the pipeline of talent coming into the city, which, by the way, wasn't coming. It was right here. It was just completely unknown. So that's where that's why we built the Kaplan Institute. And it's really transformational. Something like 40% of the kids come in, and their families are in the lowest 5% or something of the economic strata, and they graduate as engineers, and they're in the top 10 or 15%. So just a remarkable, life-changing kind of channel, and giving them the people skills, though, turned out to be really important, because alumni would come back and they would literally say to us, we're still in the cubicle because they don't think we're management talent. And we would say, well, that's because you don't talk. You don't know how to sell yourself, and you don't know how to do these other things. You're a great electrical engineer or computer scientist, but you don't know how to pitch.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you certainly have put your money and your resources, and one of them being your vast knowledge, where your mouth is, right? In terms of looking at problems that transcend the business and that are affecting the community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and by the way, I mean, if you talk about what I'm proudest of, is we built the classroom in a junior high school in Bronzeville. And we trained 7th and 8th graders to be entrepreneurs. And to this day, I mean, and this is just beginning. I mean, the greatest thing that ever happened was the two paths to get out of the ghetto used to be a jock or rock.
That's right. Sports and music.
And lo and behold, the last few years, every musician, every jock has said, you know what, I'm an engineer. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I'm not just this. And so lo and behold, entrepreneurs became rock stars, and the kids got that message. But you still had to show them that entrepreneurs were not just the people selling drugs on the corner. I mean, they were entrepreneurial, but
smart people.
But you had to show them that they had the skills to be successful. They had to do it in school, but they could then run their own businesses and stuff. And some of the businesses they came up with and things were fabulous. And so using that tool, we created a curriculum for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders to create their own businesses. And that since has turned into like the Chicago Innovation Fair, which is for kids. And, there's all kinds of different programs trying to get kids to be sort of junior entrepreneurs. And, and there's Nifty, and there's a bunch of different organizations now. But just seeing the lights go on in the kids' heads was really fabulous. And by the way, that was something we stole from Flashpoint, which was our digital media school, which was you never talked to them about math. You talked to them about the budget for their music video, or you didn't talk to them about English. You talked to them about the script for their movie. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden that was okay. That was okay. That wasn't like some crappy subject at school. And so that was really important because their vision changed of what the power of that learning was, and it was going to power their future. So, well,
you're bringing up something that maybe we've touched on before, but I think it's worth asking you about. I'm certain that you have a perspective, which is our educational system. It seems to me it's not necessarily aligned with some of the skills that we need.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
for the workforce. Now and in the future.
Look, I think that I think education and healthcare are our two biggest risks, and I think we're doing a lousy job in both. But in education in particular, just what you said is true. But what's funny is we fall into this trap of thinking again that it's a technical set of classes and lessons, when it's really these soft skills. And so I tell people every day, don't teach coding, because that whatever code you're teaching won't be worth anything in a year. Teach the problem solving and the organizational thought, and how do I line up my ideas from start to finish. Teach them to think. And unfortunately, that's a qualitative dimension as opposed to a quantitative dimension, and it doesn't fit with the way we run our schools, the way we reward teachers, the way schools get money, any of this stuff. Now, more and more colleges are doing away with standardized testing, in part for that reason, in part for other reasons, but they're at least getting away from, you got to have this grade in order to be successful. But I don't know. The problem is it's very, very hard. It's not hard to teach it, but it's hard to measure it. And so, the best work in this area is being done in the charter schools, which don't have the same strictures in terms of everything has to be measured and quantified and stuff like that. Now, unfortunately, those aren't schools that are generating any kind of results for the lower third of the population. They're kids who already come with a ton of benefits, and having them go to a open-ended sort of free thought school, which has living on its reputation, is going to get them into the right kind of colleges anyway. Right. So I don't know. I mean, we have to do a bunch of things. And as I say, that's one whole track is changing the educational process to teaching them to think. And then the other one is, if you're going to teach them skills, let's not be embarrassed to teach them practical skills that lead directly to jobs, and not pretend that you're going to teach them to be literary giants and then have them be unemployed, when they get out of school. Yeah.
Well, we touched on this, I guess, but I'm going to ask the question more pointedly around tech. And what's the next iteration that you see for tech?
Well, I think that the next leapfrog is, and there was an article just recently that said Amazon and these companies have too much money, and so they're inventing stupid things that really don't matter, like little robots and things like that. I'm not sure that that tech is going to be what's going to drive the next jump. I think it's going to be changes in the content. Tech will help us make it more distributable, more accessible. Sure. It certainly has made knowledge more readily available, provided you know how to research and provided you second source things so that you're not buying into horrible information, which 70 million people in this country still are. But I don't see, virtual much of anything. I mean, we've got a couple of companies. The technology is way too primitive. It's too distancing. 1871 was going to have a virtual, meeting where, everybody was supposed to get on this system and get your own avatar and, attend the meeting. And, it's like you put 3 more layers of aggravation in between people that are perfectly comfortable to be on Zoom. And the thought that adds anything to the process is foolish. So I think we're going to need to take a break on the technology and say, good enough is good enough for now. And 5G is plenty of connectivity and speed and everything else, and go much more to a focus on content and what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And by the way, in businesses, but also in other areas as well. So, I think we already know that we can extract more information using technology than we can absorb or than we can apply. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we take a couple of steps backwards to just sort of dumb the stuff down because we don't know what to do with it as it is. We're going to have devices on everything. We're going to have 1 trillion cameras and things measuring everything. But until you turn those into practical applications. So I don't know. I think that we're going to have to take a break, and we may see what happens with social everything. I mean, I think between Facebook and the politics, we are going to see some restrictions on the damage we're doing to kids. But I mean, look, I think, my own feeling is that we started to damage our own minds, when Sesame Street came along and they concluded that no segment could be longer than 20 seconds. And then we got to be all like, what,
wow. I don't remember that. I guess I'm a product of that generation.
What's the next stimulant? And, I mean, everything was a little segment. There wasn't any through line. There wasn't a story that took a half an hour. Everything was
sound bites.
Sound bites. Yeah. And so I think that did a lot for a generation's attention span.
Yeah.
And about investing time in learning about something before there was a payoff, and so, but today it's like off the charts. I mean, today, these tests that they do where they build up a fake personality of a young girl, and then 30 seconds later, they're starting to get diet ads and all these horrible, things about, starving yourself and, doing plastic surgery. I mean, it is frightening. I mean,
it is bad.
And the core, the core learning, this girl is testifying right now, this woman is testifying right now before the Congress, that basically, I'm going to feed you back the stuff that makes you angry because that's going to engage you more. That drove a lot of the political, results and what's going on in this country. But so they're going to have to do, I don't know what they're going to do, but I mean, they're going to have to do
regulation, you mean, right? Something's going to have to happen. Yeah.
And of course, I know this because we were in regulated businesses and we knew that you could paper these people to death and they were a bunch of bureaucrats and they had no chance in the world of, without whistleblowers, they had no chance in the world of keeping up with it. I mean, Facebook could probably drown the entire FTC in data. And what's the FTC going to do? They're going to look through 3 billion records and see, this woman caught a cold because, they told her not to take this pill or something. So I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do it. I think thinking that Congress, a bunch of idiots, can do anything is not going to do it. So maybe the answer is going to have to be that the people who invest in these businesses and who are on their boards, although Theranos wouldn't prove this to be the case, are going to have to sort of step up and hold management a little bit accountable. And say, we'll take a slight hit in profits, but we're not going to kill a generation of kids and stuff. So I don't know. I don't think we can. That regulation is going to get it done. And the worst outcome would be if you get rid of Section 230, which is sort of protects them as platforms as opposed to publishers. Then you're going to have the kind of free for all that these idiots in Texas passed, where every schmo is going to sue everybody, and you're going to have the courts clogged up, and nothing's going to come of that either. So I don't know. I don't know how we're going to solve that problem, but it is a problem, and I think every so often you read an article about the parents in the Valley not even giving their kids laptops and keeping them off the web entirely. And, you have to wonder, I mean, if this is what they're doing, I mean, what should the rest of the country be doing? So,
well, there's probably a need for some of that to try to offset the intense competition that's going on. Having lived out there, it was strange. It was that dystopian mindset that people talk about.
Yeah. No, I think they think they're going to insulate their kids from it, and then their kids are going to grow up and they're going to be subject to, this is like you don't have sugar at home, so when you go out, all you do is eat sugar.
Gorge on it, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and ask you this as we kind of wind down. I'm always interested in consciousness and people sort of expanding their personal awareness. Do you have a particular faith or a mindset or a philosophy that you practice or follow? And if so, when did that kick in?
I hate to be redundant, but it's, basically that you get what you work for, not what you wish for. And I've never found anything that's clearer or more, easy than that. I mean, hope is a nice, sort of encouragement, but it's not a strategy. I mean, it's, you have to put one foot in front of the other. I do think this. I do think that too few of us set out. We think we're moving forward, and what we really should do is be moving backwards. And what I mean is we should set a goal, and then we should take the steps back from the goal to say, how do I reach it? And there are going to be times when there's a hole in the middle, and you could write in here, miracle happens here. But if you didn't have the miracle, maybe that's not a goal that is attainable for you at the present time. And so maybe you have to recalculate. But I think that we just sort of go off sometimes, and I'm going to go do this, and we don't give enough thought to the process and the steps that it will take and the time commitment and whether it's realistic or not. So, listen, people say to me all the time, why didn't you go into politics, or why didn't you move to New York, or why didn't you expand the business beyond, 40 million and all these things. And, I think the answer was always that I was pretty conscious of the calculations of the trade-offs. And not so many people are. I mean, some of these people, you don't know that you've gone too far until you've gone beyond it. Hunter Thompson used to always say, you don't find the edge until you pass it. So I suspect that some of the things that I've done have been great. They could have been 20 times larger, and then I wouldn't have probably had a family that I'm proud of, and have some friends and have some thousands of employees who are grateful, instead of like, well, we tried, but it blew up. And now, you have to ask yourself, are the WeWork people grateful for the experience or not? Are the Theranos people, happy or not? And so, I think being realistic and being sort of straightforward and having, the clear idea that it is a process. People think that innovation is like invention, and it's not. Inventing something.
Make that distinction for us, would you please?
Well, inventing something is really hard, and you can fail a lot of times. And innovating something is making it just a little bit better. And it's a process, and it's very scientific. I mean, you try something, it works, you build on it. It doesn't work, you try something else, you measure, you modify, and you do it again. It's a loop. And every professional in every trade, in every industry will tell you exactly that you get better by getting a little bit better every day and continuing to do that. So that's been my philosophy. It's never been, it's always been, you don't leave this log until you've got a firm, it's right. Frogger, it's like, you don't want to be caught between logs. And, look, these, we wouldn't be in space in the way we are if Elon Musk and some of these, people hadn't done what they've done.
Sure.
But, that wasn't my calling. And believe me, there was a very serious set of times. I mean, when you're in the music business, as I was, and in the movie business, the temptations and the craziness are staggering. And so, but family was and is, very, very important. And, my kids are normal, which is a godsend.
Tell us about your kids.
So I have 2 daughters and 4 granddaughters, and they're all normal, but the genes come out. I mean, they're very transactional. They're very successful in what they're doing, and they're good. They're good kids, and I like them, and they like me.
And love them, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you love your kids, you don't always like them.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they have been, and they're good parents too. So all of that, leads me to think that. That's what you want to do. You want, your family is always going to be a greater extension of you than your work when the dust settles. And so I'm very proud of them. And, and I talk not enough about my wife, but I mean, you couldn't do this stuff without an enormous, support system and somebody who has a lot of faith and confidence in you as well, but also who's constantly calling bullshit and, reminded me,
She's grounded and humble.
Yeah, she's grounded, but she's, look, she also has her passions, for animals and for, stuff. So, I think that, as a life philosophy, it's been work. I'll tell you one small anecdote. I, was offered a huge job in New York for a big law firm. And, the guy said, you'll, you can come and do this and that, and you'll have all these things. And I said to him, well, how is your life divided? And he said that his life is divided between work and family. And I said, well, what about like recreation and stuff? And he said, I love my work enough that I made that trade. And this is a really interesting calculation. So when I say work is sort of central to my life, I mean, so is family, but I don't play golf. I don't have a spare, 5 hours a weekend away from my family and my kids to pretend that, oh, they're swimming at the country club pool or something. So that's family time. But you have to make those choices, and mine was that my work was rewarding enough and important enough to not be able to try to think that you could do too many other things at the same time. So now, at my advanced age, I mean, I'm starting to have a little more leisure time. So I'm doing reading that, has accumulated and writing. But I think that if you have the privilege of working with talented people and doing important stuff and you enjoy it, that's a lot. That's a lot to be grateful for. And then if you can add family to that, the fact that, I don't go to Las Vegas for the weekend with the guys and I don't bowl and, those were different kinds of choices that never really were that important to me. But, there's only X hours in the day. And so,
right.
You have to make those kinds of choices.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Howard, you have made us think about a lot of things going forward and to reflect on a lot of things in our past that might inform the future that we're about to find ourselves in. And I'm grateful for all that you've brought to Chicago and to the world, in fact. You're just a vast thinker, and we are lucky to have you. And so I'm personally grateful for the time that you've taken.
Well, thanks. Look, I'm glad to be here. I want to leave you with one thought because we mentioned love before, and I know that's central to your thing. And I've struggled with this because there are a couple of people writing now about love your employees and this, that, and the other. And I think I reserve that word for interpersonal family. It's what you said before, like and love your kids. Mm-hmm. I think that as an employee or as an employer, when you talk about work, it's about respect, and it's not love or fear, frankly. It's about, do I respect you? Do I provide opportunities for you? Do I give you access to the resources that you need? And then do I commit to continuing to educate you in a lifelong learning sense so that you can improve yourself? And, if you hit enough of those boxes, I think you don't have to call that, passion, love, this, that. I think the foundation is what's important. And it's really based on respect, because look, not every person that comes into your work is going to be somebody you can necessarily stand. I mean, I wrote a piece recently about, if you have the best salesman in the world, but he's an asshole, you just have to fire him. But because the damage he's doing to other people is toxic, Yeah. But having said that, I mean, I think that we have to be careful not to cheapen that particular word because you just can't love everybody. I mean, you can be nice and respectful and things like that. But so that's something that I think we need to work on. We need to figure out some new language for the work environment, especially now, because with hybrid work environments, I just think that people are going to be so distant. I mean, there are, like a year and a half's worth of new employees that basically have never been in their office.
Not been in the office.
And wow, I mean, just the reintegration, and maybe they'll never be integrated because maybe they'll always be remote or a significant portion of them. This is going to be a blow for culture that's going to be astonishing. It's going to be really, really challenging for how do you communicate and build your culture when you don't have the water cooler. I mean, people, the early research, Microsoft did some research that the early research is that not as much innovation is possible in this remote context. And I don't know, that's sort of a fantasy that standing around the water cooler, the three of you will invent the new whatever. Because as I say, I don't think it's incidental. I think it's an actual process, which you could do in any circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a valuable sort of piece of research that suggests that proximity is really critical to the sharing and creation of new ideas. And
that's because that's what we've known.
Yeah, that's what we've always done. Yeah.
Right. So who's to say that we can't adapt? I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
we've done that as a species for
many years.
Eons. Yeah. I think going back. No, I was just going to mention, I think going back, and one of the words that I keep hearing a lot now is empathy, maybe as a substitute for love. I think of love in a very universal way, right? That one radiates that.
I think empathy. I think that empathy is a good synonym, and and I think that's again that's a good start. I mean, look, if you look at the psychology or the psychopsychology of some of the people that are leading some of these technology companies, you would have a difficult time demonstrating that they had any feelings at all, much less that they were empathetic or whatever. So and these people sort of pride themselves on being, on the spectrum. I don't know if that's something to brag about, but anyway, I think it's been great. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and
thank you.
And I'm going to have lunch with one of our good friends now, so we'll catch up. And
all right,
and
tell him I said hello.
Talk soon. Okay.
I take it that's Howard Ecker. I'm gonna give Howard a shout out.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you,
Howard Tullman. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy Fifth Dimensional Leadership, subscribe, share, and leave a rating or review on your platform of choice. And don't forget to check us out at jennyclarke.com. That's GINNYCLARKE.com. You can explore this and prior episodes, view tips and tricks, and sign up for special announcements. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. And until then, remember, you're just that good. Special thanks to writer and collaborator Jackson Best, contributors Sadasia McCutcheon and Tianka Shepard, operations manager Kimberly Cupitz, and production and editing Podfly Productions.